So for today, I'm going to talk about pleural effusions and an herb called Bai Jie Zi. Bai Jie Zi. So I'll talk about pleural effusions first. Pleural effusions in Western allopathic medicine is when you have fluid accumulate in the small space between the lungs and the rib cage. And the lining of the lungs, the outer lining actually is contiguous with the rib cage. And so you have this space actually in between your rib cage and your lungs, and that's what allows it to have space when it contracts and expands, and it allows the lungs to fill up that space. And so that space is called the pleural space. And normally when you're healthy and you don't have any lung problems, that space is usually pretty narrow. It's got a little bit of fluid just to kind of keep everything smooth and lubricated, but it doesn't accumulate a lot of fluid. But one thing that can happen is that space can get filled up with fluid, and it can happen for lots of different reasons. It can happen from having a pneumonia, or if you have heart failure and the fluid gets backed up. It can happen in cancer. It can happen from a lot of different things. Probably the most common reason I see it is when patients have heart failure and then they start building up fluid around the lungs and also within the lungs. And I would say pneumonia is the other common reason that we see pleural effusions. And then a lot of times we see people who have some amount of fluid and we never really find a clear reason why. And they may not feel all that bad, but it may impact them a little bit. They may feel tired easily, not able to breathe as easily. And if it's been going on for a while and it began insidiously, they may not even have noticed that change. So it's kind of a pretty large spectrum of how badly it affects people. Now, the herb I wanted to talk about today, it's called Bai Jie Zi. And Bai Jie Zi is, it's also known as white mustard seed. And, if you think about mustard seeds, they have this acridity to them. They have this kind of like um, opening your nasal passage type of sense to them. It's kind of like a pungent sense. And so white mustard seed is actually, in Chinese medicine, it's considered warm and acrid and somewhat of an opening type herb. And it's classified as an herb that helps to resolve phlegm, and especially in the lungs. Bai Jie Zi goes to the lungs. That's the organ that it targets. And it's a warm herb, like I said, and it helps to expel phlegm. And one of the ways it does that is by moving the qi of the lungs. It helps to start promoting movement of the lung energy, and that helps to resolve the dampness and the phlegm that is sitting in the lungs. Now, one of the unique things about this herb is that in the ancient literature, it was thought to be able to treat dampness in the region between the skin and what they call the membranes. And in the ancient texts, they didn't really have the term for pleural space or pleural effusions or those kinds of things, or congestive heart failure, but they did describe the fact that there could be dampness or fluid sitting within the subcostal region between the skin and the membranes, which I think is what is pointing to the lungs and the pleural space and the pleural effusions. And so this is a herb that could be used in those kinds of situations. And of course, it's a warm herb, so you need to be cautious. And also, in the medical literature, it's not recommended for patients who have weak constitution. So if you're already in a very weak state, you need to balance this herb with other herbs that can help support your constitution. It's not something you want to just take all by itself, because it does move the qi, and that can be too much for some people. So Bai Jie Zi, it's a warm herb. It can help treat phlegm, dampness, fluid, and one of the unique properties is that it is useful for treating that dampness between the skin and the membranes, or what we call the pleural space. All right, and we'll see you next time.